Xerxes, and he tried them out. Now, we don't know exactly what he did to try them out, but we do know that before she went to King Xerxes, she was in the harem for the maidens. And after she left King Xerxes the next day, she went to the harem for the concubines. So whatever happened on any particular night, society said that this woman has been used by the king. He had truly tried. Now, we don't know in Esther's case, and we can look at Esther and say, oh, that was very immoral of Esther. Well, she's trapped. The poor woman is trapped. Just like Abigail was trapped, and Naomi was trapped, and Ruth was trapped. Trapped in an immoral culture. I guess probably the brave thing for Esther to do would have been to commit suicide. But let's be real. She was trapped in this immoral culture, and she just went with it. I can identify with that. I'll bet you can too. Lo and behold, she is chosen by Xerxes to be the queen of Persia. Now, this whole time, her uncle, Esther is an orphan child, her uncle Mordecai has been watching out for her and has made Esther promise, don't you tell anybody that you are Jewish. So she was made queen of Persia. Then the prime minister of Persia, a man named Haman, wanted to get rid of all the Jews. He wanted to kill all the Jews. And he kind of tricked the king, tricked King Xerxes into signing an edict where people could decimate the Jews and take their wealth away. And Haman even put 10,000 talents of silver into the treasury in order to get rid of it. And you think, now why would Xerxes, in a very open society like Persia, why would he validate such a thing? Well, here's one of the theories. Xerxes was the king who led the Persians into Greece and was defeated at the Battle of Marathon. By these little tiny Greek city-states, they were defeated by them. How could this happen? And he comes back, and what happens after a big defeat like that? In most countries, you start looking for enemies. And perhaps in Persia, at this time, they were looking for enemies. They were looking for people to blame for their defeat at Marathon. And Haman said, I know, we'll blame the Jews. Let's blame them. It's happened before. It's happened since. Let's blame the Jews. And the king is, he's absolutely thunderstruck that he lost this battle. He says, okay, we'll blame the Jews. Probably was their fault. Well, pick up the story in Esther chapter 4, and I'm just going to read this section of scripture to you. Just listen to the word of the Lord. Esther chapter 4, beginning in verse 7. Mordecai, that is Esther's uncle, told him, that is a servant of Mordecai's, everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. He obviously didn't have the highest view of Esther's logical capabilities. Explain this to Esther. And he told him to urge her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach, I don't know how to pronounce that name, Hathach, went back, that is the servant, and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she, Esther, instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that he be put to death. The only exception to this is for the king to extend a cold scepter to him, and spare his life. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. When Esther's words were reported back to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this?" Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Lord Jesus, our prayer is in these last few minutes that you alone would be exalted. If I perish, I perish. Esther took a stand for mercy. "Fast for me," she said. I'm one slide behind, I apologize. "Fast for me," she said. "Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Esther took a stand for mercy. She acted dangerously. She went where she was not allowed without an invitation. She acted promptly. She didn't say, "Well, let's take 30 days to study this situation and seek out consultants." No, it was a 3-day fast and then action. She acted shrewdly. I love what she does. She goes into the king's presence, and Xerxes holds out to her the golden scepter and says, "Queen Esther, what do you want? Anything you ask, up to half my kingdom I will give it to you." And Queen Esther says, "All I want is for you and your prime minister to come to dinner. We're on our way." And he calls Haman. And Haman and Xerxes go to a private dinner with Queen Esther. And Queen Esther wines them and dines them, and at the end of dinner, King Xerxes says, "Now, my queen, what is it that you want? Anything you ask, I will give it, up to half my kingdom." And Queen Esther said, "If you really want to know what I want, will you and Haman come to dinner again tomorrow?" Okay. The next day, they come to dinner. She was shrewd. She didn't just bluntly explain what she wanted. She was very shrewd. She was very wise. She enticed him, and at the same time entrapped Haman. She acted boldly. Now, there's a problem with the book of Esther. And the problem with the book of Esther is the vengeance of Queen Esther, and perhaps of the Jews as well as a group. You know, nowhere in the New Testament, neither Jesus nor any of the apostles, do they ever reference Esther. They reference Jonah, they reference Isaiah, they reference Zechariah, Ezekiel, but they never reference Esther. There is no Christian commentary written on the book of Esther for 7 centuries. Martin Luther thought Esther was a terrible book and ought to be expunged from the Bible. He didn't like the book of James either, or Jude, or Revelation. We go on down the list. God is never mentioned in the book of Esther. It has, I am told, some of the most beautiful Hebrew in all the Old Testament, but God is never mentioned by any name. Esther, what Esther does, contradicts the law of Moses. Esther arranges not only for Haman to be destroyed, which makes perfect sense, but she also arranges for Haman's 10 sons to be hanged. The Bible, the law of Moses, is very clear that children do not suffer for the sins of the father. The Jewish vengeance, according to the book of Esther, led to the slaughter of 75,000 of their enemies. Now, apparently it was in some kind of self-defense process, but 75,000 people died. And so a lot of Christians, especially in the early church, did not like the book of Esther. What then can we learn from the book of Esther? May I suggest this? Our challenge is whatever position you're in, wherever you find it, use your place, use your position for mercy. Wherever you are, whatever your state, whatever your situation, use it for mercy. In spite of all of Esther's failings in the vengeance side, she acted for mercy. She used her position for mercy. Mordecai challenged her. How do you know that you haven't landed right here, right now, from some divine appointment? Do not think that you are the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. God has placed you here so that you can act mercifully. It may be you are where you are today because of God's divine plan for your life. It may be you are where you are today by chance. I was fascinated that in Joplin, Missouri, a couple of weeks ago, at Freeman Hospital West, the evening of that terrible tornado that blew through that city and killed hundreds of people and damaged, who knows, injured who knows how many people. That night at Freeman Hospital West, double the number of hospital staff showed up for work because they were in a place where they knew that their gifts were needed. And they came and acted out of mercy. Did God put them in that place? I don't think so. They were just there. And they used that opportunity for mercy. Whatever your position, use it for mercy. There's a University of West Virginia linebacker, just graduated from college just last week. He's drafted by the Chicago Bears. He's going to play linebacker for the Chicago Bears if they ever play football again. His name is J.T. Thomas, and last month he met 14-year-old Jocelyn Lavelle. Jocelyn Lavelle uses a wheelchair. During that meeting, she confided in him that all of the boys that Jocelyn had invited to her middle school dance had turned her down. Lavelle, who attends Suncrest Middle School in Morgantown, that's the home of West Virginia University, has spina bifida, a condition that prevents the spinal cord from developing, so she lives her life in a wheelchair. JT said, I hugged her and signed a few things, and we talked for a while, and she cried a bit. I gave her a hug and told her that somehow everything would work itself out. Shortly after the meeting, Thomas' stepmother, who raised him, called the school. This is shrewd love. Called the school and asked if it would be okay for her son to invite Jocelyn to the dance. And then the stepmother called Jocelyn's parents and asked if it would be all right for her son to take their 14-year-old daughter to the dance. And they got permission. And so her hulking linebacker son showed up at 14-year-old Jocelyn's house in a nice black rented Chrysler car, probably one of those mafia cars like you drive. Had roses and a corsage, and he took Jocelyn to middle school dance, and he danced with her while she sat in her wheelchair. And Jocelyn got to take him around to all the boys who turned her down and introduced J.T. Thomas.